Hey, I'm Daisy Fuentes, and I just spent some time talking to Kara on Really Famous, and I gotta tell you, two Jersey girls talking away. You gotta experience it. There's really nothing else I can say. How do you explain that? You just gotta listen.
This is Really Famous. I'm Kara Mayer Robinson, and I interview famous people. But I don't just interview them like your typical interview. I'm not really interested in those same old questions. Instead, I like to know who they really are and what they really think. Sometimes it's like listening to old friends catching up, and other times it's like eavesdropping on a therapy session. Today's guest is Daisy Fuentes. I'm kicking off 2020 with a guest who inspires me, and I think she may inspire you too. I love her perspective, her approach to life, her insight, and her authenticity. So, Daisy is hosting a brand new show for NBC called A New Leaf. It's sponsored by Ancestry.com, and it helps everyday people discover their family history using genealogy and sometimes DNA analysis to help guide them on their journey of self-discovery. The show basically picks a new guest every week who wants to know more about their ancestry, does the full-on research for them, and then Daisy presents the results. Check your local listings because when it airs depends on where you live. So, you may know Daisy, of course, as the popular MTV VJ, or you may remember her from House of Style, America's Funniest Home Videos, Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve, her CNBC talk show. I can go on and on. She's a TV personality, host. She does a lot of things, and she's also an entrepreneur. Now, I'll get to that in a second. Daisy has had a pretty cool career path. She started as a model, accidentally scored a last-minute gig presenting the weather on Telemundo, and everything basically blew up from there. About 15 years ago, she launched a clothing line and a hair care line, sunglasses, prescription eyewear. She has shoes. You can get it all online, Daisy Fuentes style. So Daisy and I met on my recent trip to California. Shout outs to Robin and Christy for connecting us. Thank you guys. I drove up to Daisy's Malibu home where she hangs out with her really famous husband, musician Richard Marx. Yes, she's married to Richard Marx. So anyway, I met Daisy at her Malibu home, which is literally on top of the Pacific. It's a beach house, and she showed me where the water splashes up during high tide. It's a very zen place, very soothing, very relaxing. She poured me a glass of water. Her dog kind of snuggled up beside us, and we sat down for an enlightening talk. Oh, and we bonded over New Jersey too. But we didn't get around to that until after the interview. Next time, we decided we'll talk Jersey.
So I like podcasts because it's pretty much uncensored. You can talk about anything. There are no rules. And for, most of my life, I was doing television, which is very censored and very controlled. Mm-hmm. And the older that I get, the more that I just want to say what's on my mind. And the older that I get, the more I have to say. And the less that I want people telling me how to say it.
Right.
I
love that, actually.
Yeah, right.
And you get something in a podcast that you never get, honestly, on TV or on a live stage even. It's so intimate. It's just going to be a regular conversation. It's very rare, I think, that the air changes a little bit and I can feel that somebody's feeling like they're supposed to, say something a certain way or whatever. And I'm glad about that.
Yeah. I'll be driving, listening to podcasts.
Yes.
And I genuinely feel like I'm eavesdropping, or sometimes I feel like I'm just popping in on the conversation. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I hear myself going, yeah. Or I hear myself going, that's ridiculous. I become like that person that's just yelling stupid shit out loud at the car, like if they can hear me. But that's what a good conversation will do. Sometimes you're just listening and it's information, but a really good conversation between two people really makes you feel like you're listening to something you're not supposed to.
Right.
Or you're part of the conversation.
Right. And you feel like you know the people, I think, also.
Which doesn't usually happen when you're watching TV or when, even like the good morning shows that are really casual and you like the people because they're great personalities and you've been watching them forever and they're fun. That's still not really how people are when they whatever they want. Whether or not they say something they may regret later, that's okay.
Yes.
Because I feel like we're probably at a point in our lives, I don't know about you, but, once you get past your 30s, you get to a point where, you might say something you'll regret, but so what?
Right.
You said it. And unless you say something really screwed up where you're hurting people, it's like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And I actually think that becomes a more valuable something or other. So, for example, there are times when I will be editing one of my podcasts. And I don't edit much. I really mostly almost only take things out if it's too long. Because I don't want to have there have been conversations that went on for 3 hours. I'm not going to lie. So that's a little long. I don't know that it needs 3 hours of this. I love the 3 hours that I have, but I don't know that everybody else does. So usually it's just that. But sometimes I'll listen to something. I'll be like, oh, I have to take that out. I cannot believe I just said that. And then I'll be like, you know what? That's what makes it real. Yeah. I ask that of my guests to just be yourself and say what you're really thinking or feeling. So I need to do the same thing myself. Yeah. And I do think that people relate to those little things more because they're like, oh, yes, you're a real person. Yeah. And I felt like that too, or I would have said that I was cracking up or whatever it is. So
especially we're living in an age where everybody is so critical of everything.
I know.
And no matter
attacks of all kinds.
No matter what you say, people are going to give you so much shit and people are going to criticize everything that you say. You can't listen to those keyboard warriors, those people who are just, sitting at home with their private accounts just criticizing everybody and doing nothing in life.
For a hobby or something. Yeah. So I was interested in what you said about it. So it's very purposeful, or what was the word you used on TV? Like very micromanaged or something, or planned?
Censored.
What was it? Censored.
Yeah.
All right. So can you give me some details? Like, what do you, how? What are you thinking of?
Of everything. I'm thinking of network and even cable. Every television program is really controlled by your advertisers, and you might be too to some degree. But perhaps you can, clap back and be like, okay, well, I'll get another advertiser or whatever, because at the end of the day, it's what it's what you want to talk about, and you are going to talk about what you want to talk about. And if one of your advertisers is bent out of shape about something that you believe in or want to talk about, then you might say, okay, fair enough, I'll get another advertiser. On television, it's different. It's very different. It's controlled by standards and practices. It's controlled by advertising. It's controlled by really scared executive producers and network executives, and everybody is scared for their jobs. And it's so many cooks in the kitchen, and so many people have a say in every single little thing.
That must be exhausting.
It is, but there comes a point where you just know that that's what it is, and you choose your battles. That's not the place where you're gonna really fight to say certain things.
Okay,
that's not your platform to really to speak up on certain things.
So give me an example.
Even something as simple as veganism. They don't
want to hear it. Oh, they don't want to turn off an advertiser who's selling something non-vegan.
Exactly.
Okay. And you think everybody's operating out of fear, huh?
You just have to kind of follow the money. Follow the money, because that will dictate who controls the conversation.
And you've been on so many different TV shows.
Yeah.
So many. I do want to ask you about a new Leaf, which is your new one.
Yeah.
It's sponsored by Ancestry.com,
yes.
right?
Yeah, and it's all about finding your ancestry and your family and tracing that, which is really interesting. And I feel like people are so into that these days, who they're related to and who did what and who came from where. And I can see why. I just sent in my own DNA.
Just?
Yes.
Oh, and so you're waiting for the result.
I'm waiting to see.
What do you think? Do you think you know it?
Yeah, I don't expect anything too different. I mean, I know I was born in Cuba, and I went to Spain when I was 3. My mother's from Spain and all her family's from Spain. My father's from Cuba and his family's from Cuba. So I don't expect anything different than Cuban and Spanish.
Except it does go far back. So there could be even a small percentage of something.
Sure.
I did mine a few years ago. I was so curious because I really feel Italian.
Yeah.
And like the family history is my mom's side is Irish mostly, and my dad's side is like German, Austrian. And so that's the family story. But I could swear when I'm in Italy, I'm like, these are my people. I'm home. I feel like it in my bones that I'm home. So I was like, I have to find out. So I did take the Ancestry.com test, the DNA test. And it came back, there was maybe I think it was 2% Italian Greek. So like they kind of lumped those two together. I was like, all right, so somebody down the road or behind me was Italian.
There you go.
And then they revamped it. So they didn't revamp it, but they came back maybe 6 months ago or a year ago and said, we have so many more samples now that we can pinpoint better what's what. So I ended up having 0 Italian.
Oh no.
0.
And that's the thing is that when you really go back in time, countries used to be something else.
Right.
That's what I'm finding out, that people who thought, they were, we're 100% Greek. Well, in those times, now when they get their DNA, they're showing they're like 50% Italian because Italy was, in what is now, part of Greek is what used to be Italy, or part of that used to be this, and
so many changes.
Yeah, a lot
so
of
it's very fluid. But it is fun to see, I think, what's what.
It is. It's really interesting.
It is interesting. So you're waiting to see what's going to come back, but it's probably going to be what you think it is.
I know it's going to be mostly Cuban and Spanish, but with that mix, there are a lot of influences.
Right.
With the Spanish and with the Cuban. There could be Afro-Cuban involved in there. There could be I don't know, with the Spanish side, there could really be, I don't really even know, like there could be a little bit Moroccan or a little bit more of, who knows?
You'll find out.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing too that I think people are finding out with the DNA coming back is like sisters and brothers or siblings or like kids of people.
I do not want to know that. I do not need to know that.
But I think that's a big thing that has come out with the science. It's like everybody in those previous generations who tried to bury things under the rug, suddenly they are being revealed by science.
That is true.
People contact other people like, oh, I was matched to your DNA. It's like everybody's secrets have been.
Right. I actually know someone who went through that.
As what
this
part?
Woman who did this DNA and realized that she was half Italian and had this whole family in Italy, had a twin sister in Italy.
A twin sister?
Yeah.
That she didn't know about?
That she didn't know about.
Well, why? Was she adopted?
I don't remember exactly what happened.
Okay.
Or maybe it wasn't a twin sister. I think they were almost, she was like 9 months apart. Like a few months apart.
So there's a story there.
Yeah.
So interesting.
But the sister looked identical to her, but was from a different,
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like I heard a story somewhere too where somebody found out they had a big family and they were so welcoming to this person who didn't even know.
Yeah, and it turns out that the same thing happened with her. This whole family was really welcoming, and she really took to the sister, and they were really happy that they discovered this. Everyone except obviously for the girl's mother.
Sure.
And there were a couple of people that were very upset by it, but everybody else was really excited, and everybody was like, oh my God, this was almost 40 years ago. Let's get past it.
Yeah, that's it really does just blow things out of the water. Like you can't even predict what's going to happen. But that is so interesting. And the show, I was watching one of the episodes of A New Leaf like a couple of weeks ago, I think. And you go through the whole chart with the guest of the show of the day. And like you point to this, you go through it. I'm always confused by the term second cousins. Can you explain that to me once and for all? I feel like I don't even understand what is a second cousin.
So I think the second cousin would be from and I don't want to say it wrong because it is really complicated and a little confusing. So I think so a great grandfather, the son, maybe,
Is what?
is your great
Second cousin?
like your second cousin, maybe.
Okay. I don't know.
And then their son maybe is your second cousin, your second cousin. I don't.
Okay, I don't know. But I think it's always confused me.
So I think like your great grandfather's son maybe at that point becomes like your second cousin.
Okay.
I think.
Right. Because I think that also on Ancestry.
I remember correctly.
Right. I don't have a family tree on Ancestry, but I know that it comes up as like how you're related to certain people, like second or third cousins or third or fourth. It just always confuses me, but it just means you're a little further away.
So the way it works is I get all this information for the families that I'm working with, and I get really involved and interested because it's the person I'm about to talk to. Yeah. And it gets really complicated, and it does go far back quite a bit. And I get into it for that moment. But then once I'm done and go to the next family, I kind of forget that one and I'm on to the next one. And it's really hard for me to remember who's what. You know what I mean?
But you definitely have to, because how can you confuse everybody's families?
Exactly.
You have to be in the moment, very present for each person.
You know, and it's a lot. It does get quite complicated. So I try to focus on the family that I'm with at the moment.
Yes, you know? I think that's the right approach.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back further. So it all started when you were a TV presenter, right?
Yes.
Is that kind of when it all started?
It all started really when I was modeling.
When you were, and that was in college?
I was going to college when my next door neighbor kind of gave me an opportunity to fill in for one of her models. She was a designer. She was an assistant designer for a big couture designer in New York.
So where was this? Was this in New Jersey?
In New Jersey, yeah. Her little sister played with my little sister. And she was short a model on a weekend, and asked my mother if I could go into the city with her. She was really desperate. 2 models called in sick, and so I went in, and it worked out. She's like, she knew I would fit the clothes, and blah blah. The rest is history. I ended up becoming the fit model for the designer. He got one of his runway models from Ford Modeling Agency to teach me how to do runway. I was really young. I think maybe I was 18. When she taught me how to do runway, so I could walk in one of his fashion shows, which was very exclusive. And that's where I met this really wonderful, very elegant woman who took a liking to me. We started speaking after the fashion show. And I said to her, I noticed you have an accent. Are you Hispanic? And she said, yes, I'm from Ecuador. And then I started speaking to her in Spanish. She said, oh, you speak Spanish. You speak very good Spanish for such a young woman who speaks perfect English. I said, oh, well, it's my first language. And she said, well, have you ever thought of doing Spanish television? It's really difficult to find young women in this country who speak perfect Spanish and perfect English. My husband is the president of Univision.
Oh, whoa.
So she kind of took me under her wing. She decided to become like my fairy godmother in television. She said, he's looking for a weather girl. And I thought, yes, because I know nothing about the weather. Let's do that. I've never done television. Just throw me in front of a green screen.
Talk about science
and the weather. And you know, when you're like 18, 19, you have no fear. You're like, oh yeah, that sounds awesome. I can do that. Yeah. So I just, I kind of, she guided me. She taught me. She prepared me. And I just went for it. I thought, what do I have to lose? Right. She was so sweet. And it was kind of like, she believed in me. So I went for it. And I learned a lot. And that's where it all started.
I hear that's all about like that one person who believed in you.
Her name is Raquel Egas. I still remember. She was lovely.
So she started everything, and then what happened from there? You did the weather.
I did the weather. I started doing that, and then I believe he left the station. I stayed on a little bit longer, and then I went to the other station, to Telemundo in New York. So I mean, can you imagine? I was like 19 years old, had no idea what I was doing, and I started the #1 market in the country for news, doing the weather. It was like, it's unheard of. So still
weather though. So you were now a weather guru.
Yes. So now I went to do the weather at the competing station, except on this channel, I had a chance I asked him to let me go out into the community and do some lighthearted stories of the community as well as the weather. And I enjoyed that a little bit more. I learned a lot about editing and about doing stories and kind of writing my own stories and putting together quick little segments. So it was at the time that MTV was all the rage. It was on everywhere you went, and every kid my age, fantasized about just living on MTV. So I remember talking to one of the editors saying, that's what I really want to do. I mean, I wish I could be on MTV. And my mom just kept saying, well, send them a tape. And I thought, Mom, it doesn't work that way. You need an agent. You need a manager, which I didn't have. And so this sweet editor said, I can maybe edit a tape together put it together for you. And my wife knows someone who knows someone who knows someone at MTV. Maybe we'll just send it to that person. And I thought, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, that random person who knows what their role is.
So sure enough, that's what we did. He put together a little tape of all these little fun segments that I had done, all in Spanish, doing the news and doing weather. And I wrote them a little note saying, hey, you guys, I love the channel. Music is my life. I promise I do speak English. I know this is in Spanish, blah, blah, blah. I don't even know what I wrote. And I thought they threw the tape in the garbage. But about 8 months later, I got a call from this wonderful woman, Barbara Corcoran, who was the executive producer of this brand new show that was about to launch, MTV Internacional, in Spanish. And Steve Leeds, who is now at Sirius XM Radio, was the on-air talent director at the time. And he was handed this tape. He had the tape, and he handed it to Barbara and said, there's this girl speaking in Spanish. I don't know what she's saying, but I thought maybe you might want to take a look at it. And she said, your Spanish was so good that I thought I'd call you to come in. And she had already looked at over 100 girls, and they all had a very detectable accent from somewhere. And she was looking for a very neutral Spanish because it was going out to so many Latin American countries.
Oh, so they were all regional? Was that it? The others?
Yeah, so she really was looking for a very clean Spanish.
And yours is clean probably because of Spain, right?
Because, when I came to this country, I had a very strong Castilian Spanish, which I guess, for those of you who don't know what that is, I can compare it to a very strong, like, Queen's English from the UK. So if someone comes to this country speaking a very proper English from England, that's what the Spanish would be like from there, as opposed to a softer Latin American Spanish.
Right.
But then I didn't speak English, and this kids from this country who spoke Spanish in New Jersey didn't understand my really strong Castilian. So I had to tone down that Spanish right away so that at least the kids who spoke Spanish could understand me. So I learned how to control my Spanish accent when I was young.
What a good influence that you had to adapt like
sure,
that.
I adapted it. And so I guess once I started doing television, I just kept it kind of neutral. Especially when I was reading teleprompter, I just kept it very clean, and it worked.
So it worked. So then you were on MTV.
Yeah. Got it.
Loved it. Did you feel like, so you never felt like, did you feel good? Like, yes, I belong here. Finally,
No, I always thought it was always going to last like another month.
Okay.
I thought it was like a fluke, and I was so lucky. And how did I end up here? I'm just going to enjoy it for as long as it lasts. Every time my contract was renewed, I thought that was going to be the last. I'm just going to enjoy it because this might be the last time I get to do this.
Right.
I kind of still feel that way every time I get a gig. So, and the truth is that you don't know. You never know. Especially in the entertainment industry, being a woman, and I'm in my 50s, and the fact that I'm still even working is. I have to be grateful every single day.
It's great though, but it does say something about you too, obviously, that you're like a force, I think, to be reckoned with.
I don't know about that. Thank you. Yeah. I really don't know about that. Okay. I'm just kind of going with it.
You're going with it. And you're open to different things. It sounds like you appreciate what you have.
I know women who are a force, and I'm certainly not one of those women. I wish I were. I believe given the chance I could be, but I know those women. And I don't dare put myself in that place.
And are they in a place where, are they successful?
Yes.
So they are, and it's because they're a force.
Yes. There are women who are a force, who are really, really doing things.
Like who? Do you want to name some?
Oh, sure. You've got women like Jennifer Lopez, who, entering her 50s are, going strong and really changing what women in their 50s are supposed to be doing or supposed to be looking like. You've got women who are the women who started the Me Too movement, who are really changing what the world looks like for women of today and future generations. Women like Greta Thunberg, who are changing the world for generations at such a young age. So those are women of force. Women, I think of women in those categories. Mm-hmm. When you say women of force, I think of women who are changing the world.
Now, in all fairness, you've done so much. So there are so many different facets of your career, with all the business things, like the entrepreneurship. I don't know would you call it entrepreneurship? Do you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
Yes.
You do? Yes. Okay. So with all of that on top of
maybe
everything,
an accidental entrepreneur,
okay.
But yes.
So you're almost an accidental a lot of things then.
Yes.
Is that how you see it? Yeah.
There were all opportunities that came my way that I think I might have been really good at taking advantage of opportunities. But I've never been one of these people who had this amazing ambition and went out and, paved the way and kicked ass and moved people out of my way to make shit happen. And I'm not one of those people, but I will work hard. I will take an opportunity and I will do the best that I can. And the older that I get, the more that I want to do things. But, when I was young, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I never had a vision for what I wanted to do. Things kind of came my way and life kind of had its plan for me and the road kind of opened up for me and I kind of went the way that it panned out for me. I took advantage of opportunities. I made decisions based on what came my way and maybe that helped my life. The decisions that I made, I don't know. The decisions that we all make kind of determine the life that we have.
Yeah, I think for sure, because there are other people I'm sure who would see an opportunity like that and for whatever reason just pass on it or not even pass on it, but just not take it and make it happen even once it was presented or not do anything good with it. So that is something, but that is interesting. You didn't really have to have a dream because it was already just kept coming to you in a way that you never even really expected, I guess.
And I remember, when I was young, a lot of people really knew what they wanted to do with their lives. They had a plan from the time that they were really, really young. Mm-hmm. They wanted to either follow in the steps of their parents or they had a dream that they wanted to be an actor or they wanted to be a singer. They had a talent that told them, clearly in the direction that they should go.
Yeah.
And I never had any of that. I never knew anyone who was in the entertainment industry. My parents came to this country when they were very young. They worked in factories. My mom, while she was working at a factory, 8 to 10 hours a day, took a government school program where she learned to speak English and learned computer skills. And so, while we were in daycare. So that's what I saw. I just saw people working hard and trying to better themselves. I didn't really have an example of people, I'm going to follow my dream and become like an entrepreneur and become, a newscaster or an actress so I was kind of lost a little bit in that way.
So what about when people started recognizing you from TV? I imagine MTV was a big part of that, right?
Yeah.
Because it was like fame at a certain point came, right?
Yeah, MTV when MTV started airing, it was not only in this country, but it was international. Mm-hmm. So that was...
So how did you see that? Like, when did you start to notice it? That people were...
It was pretty fast, and it was pretty interesting. It was pretty cool. I remember thinking it was pretty cool because it was different than today. People would notice you in the street, and they were pretty kind. It was, all the younger people especially would know my name and they would want a picture. They would want an autograph.
Right, an autograph because they weren't walking around with cameras. So
right.
Everybody wasn't.
Yeah, and I didn't get to hear all the nasty things that I didn't get to read all the nasty things that they would write, like on social media, which they would today.
Yeah, they would. They would destroy you today because they would destroy, like we were saying before, Mother Teresa.
Absolutely.
Right, they do. Right. That's awful.
So it was pretty nice. It was pretty nice. Yeah.
So it was nice fame. It was well intended.
Especially because I got to see how proud my parents were of me.
Yeah, I mean, and your mom was the one who was telling you to just send the tape.
My mom was always very supportive. So she was
they were
very
really
proud. Yeah.
They were excited to see
They
you.
never knew anybody famous. So when I started getting recognized, they were very proud. Because all of a sudden they had someone famous in the family.
Right, not only just in the family, but their own daughter, Daisy.
That was really sweet.
So what is the deal with social media today? So you know about stuff? Is it like... Do you watch it? Do you see it? Or you try to tune it out? Or what?
Absolutely. You know, I believe that social media, at the end of the day, it's about being social, isn't it? So what's the point of me having social media if I'm not going to interact with the people on it? So I do like to interact. And I have to say the majority of the people are very nice. And I do have some really nice interactions with people. And I have gotten connected with some amazing organizations. And that's a good part of social media, is that I've gotten linked with like-minded people, great organizations who I now work with. But it also brings out all the trolls.
Yeah.
And, and I do ignore them for the most part, and I try to focus on the positive. But every now and then, I feel like you have to answer because it's not okay. It's not okay. We're all grown-ups. And in society, bullying is not okay. So sometimes you have to put people in their place. It's like... You don't go to someone's house and just call them names and talk shit about them and get personal with them and then just run away. Mm-hmm. You don't get to do that. So every now and then, especially and it's usually women. It's usually women.
Oh, so there's some jealousy.
And it's not okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna call you out sometimes.
So they'll call you names or say things about you, just like what comments on Twitter or something like that. Is it mostly Twitter?
Or on Instagram.
On Instagram too? I always think of Instagram as the more friendly.
Absolutely. So I'll put a photograph. For example, I'll put a photograph of me just smiling. And they'll leave comments on my appearance. They'll either say that I look too old or that I've done surgery. What have I done? That I look like this, that I look like that I should stop doing this, that I should stop doing that. And I'm like, that is not okay.
No.
That is not okay.
So what will you do at that point?
So at that point, I just say what I would say to anybody. I'm not, I'm honest. It's like, like what went so wrong in your life that you feel it's okay to comment on another woman's appearance who you've never met? Even if I did look however the hell I wanted to look, it is none of your business and that it's not okay.
Well, no, it's not even okay to do that with somebody you're not going to do it.
Exactly.
You're not going to do it with somebody you know, somebody you don't know. I don't know why. That doesn't even...
Yeah, like what kind of mental issues do you have? Like seek some help.
Yeah, it is kind of disturbing when you think about how many numbers of people do things like that. Like, what do you... Why? I mean, I do always think it's less Instagram than I see... on Twitter, but I guess I see what you're saying in the comments. If you get that many comments, there are going to be some people who pop in.
Like my husband will post a picture of us together, and somebody will say something like, "How could you post such a derogatory or something so nasty about your wife just showing her tits?" Or like, "How could you be like that?" It's like it's your wife. Like if it's a picture where there's a cleavage or something, or he says, "Oh, my wife, she's hot." Like, why would you talk about your wife? Like, it's like, gee, like, what is wrong with you people? What is wrong with you people?
I know I can't answer that.
I don't know what is wrong with society. For the most part, you ignore it because you can tell when people are just so bitter, and when you can tell when people are just mentally deranged, when there's a serious problem, you just block it or erase the comment and move on, because at the end of the day, I don't want such negative energy rolling around in there.
Yes.
But sometimes, you have to address it.
Yeah. And then there are all the positive people too who want to go out of their way to say something
and
nice.
And most of the time, those are the people who I do interact with.
Right. And those are so you'll go back after, and if somebody comments, you'll comment.
I usually do. Usually those are my interactions. Just every now and then I have to put someone in their place.
Yeah, it's crazy. The whole social media
I know I
crazy.
shouldn't, but you know what? So what?
Right.
So what?
I think you need to do what you need to do.
Absolutely.
Like we were saying before, like you have to do enough of the censoring and enough of the controlling. Like you're going to do what you feel is right.
Someone go to someone else's account.
Yeah, but that says a lot, because You would, if you, that's exactly it. That's the whole point. You're going to somebody's account to say something negative.
It's almost like if you walk into a yoga studio, like in the next town over from you, walk inside and start yelling at the yoga instructor saying, I don't want to take a yoga class. Fuck you. How dare you?
That's the same. That's a good analogy. It's ridiculous, but it is the same thing.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Right. Yeah, it's really, I mean, there are so many positive things, but there really are so many, like, it's really crazy. So you get recognized too. I'm thinking, because I was picturing you for a second going into a yoga class. And is it weird to walk around with people knowing who you are?
So, you know, I don't know if people know as much. I think it depends on what I look like, you know?
And maybe out of context.
Yeah, I don't know. And then sometimes I feel like I'm completely incognito, and then somebody will walk up to me and be like, it's okay, I won't say anything, but it's like, I'm a fan of yours and I follow you on Instagram. It's like, oh, so you really know everything about me. Like, you should have said something. I'm sitting here thinking nobody, like, I'm completely incognito, but the whole time you've been sitting, like on a flight, for example, somebody will be sitting across from us, and then on the way out of the flight, somebody will say to Richard and me, I don't want to say anything, but I follow you guys on Instagram and I love your dogs and I love when you do this and when you say, it's like, oh, okay. We've been sitting there the whole time thinking nobody's looking. They've been staring at us the whole time or something.
So what would you prefer if they said it to you at the beginning?
Just say hi.
You would, really?
Yeah.
You would rather they say it at the beginning, say, hi, well, I'm a fan, I'm following you, I follow you both. Because it's true, they're following you on Instagram. They do see a lot about both of you.
Sure.
So it's like they do know more than...
You've been creeping for 5 hours from across the plane.
And you're like, oh, great. If I knew somebody was watching me the whole time, I wouldn't have, whatever. So you're married to Richard Marx.
I am.
The singer, the musician. How did this happen? How did you meet? Have you told the story a million times? I hope not.
We kind of met through a friend, but through a friend on social media.
Oh, hey, look at that.
Yeah. Yeah, so he was talking to a friend on social media. They were having this conversation. Martha Quinn.
Oh, Martha Quinn from MTV.
Who we both follow. Love her. And I jumped in. They were having a conversation about this total 90s thing. And
what platform is this now?
On Twitter.
Okay.
And then we kind of became aware of each other, and then we started following each other. So now we're following each other for a while. And then he invited me many months later. Right? I want to say maybe almost like a year later. He was having a show in LA. He invited me to a show. I ended up going to the show. We didn't even realize we had the same publicist at the time. And a few months after that, he invited me to dinner when he came back into town. Like, I literally only saw him for a minute, said hello at that show. But then he slipped into my DMs.
Isn't that always how it happens?
That's how it happens. That's how the kids do it these days.
Yeah.
So I hear. And and I ended up talking a little bit more at this dinner. And then after that, we kind of stayed in each other's lives.
And that was that.
That was that. I didn't realize at that time he was separated. I thought he was married and we were just friends. But
so you weren't looking at it that way at all?
I wasn't at all, because he's very private. And as far as I knew, he was married and living in Chicago. But I wasn't aware that at the time he was moving to LA and in the middle of a separation.
Oh.
But he's so private, he's not public at all. So I didn't know that until I obviously started talking to him.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you had an actual real conversation, like personal conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so he was moving out here at the time, so that was the timing was right.
Right.
It was probably a moment of turmoil for him.
Yes, he was going through a lot, so we did take it really slow, because it was, as you could imagine, for anybody going through a divorce, but especially after such a long time being married. And
how long was he married?
I think he was married 27 or 29 years.
Oh, that is a long time.
Yeah.
Was it weird knowing that he's Richard Marx?
Not really.
Because for so many years you've known so many famous people, right?
Yeah,
so you're used to that?
He's also, he'd been so out of my radar for so many years. Like, I know we must have been in the same room at the same time, at the same events, during the heyday. And I've introduced his videos in Spanish and in English back in the day. So I know him as Richard Marx from, the hit maker back in the day.
Yeah.
But I also haven't heard anything about him for so many years that it was just like, meeting somebody brand new.
Okay. That is so funny, though. If you had known then that you were announcing your future husband, isn't that so weird? Like
it's so weird.
If only you could have been hovering over yourself in some way and said,
it's so weird. I really think that the universe kind of sends you little messages. If you look back at your life, if you get a chance to look back at your life 20, 25 years and look at little details, I'll bet you there are hidden messages in there of what was coming into your life 20, 25 years later.
I see what you're saying with that. I do. I was going through, this is a couple of years ago, maybe about a year ago. For some reason, I was going through this old box of things that was in our basement. And I don't know, I must have been looking for something specific. And I pulled out this folder from a college class. And the college class was career and lifespan planning. It was my first semester in college, and it was like the only class I could get into at the last minute or something. And they had us mapping out like what we would think our career should look like what our interests were and whatnot. So I remember we did some testing and that sort of thing. And then I'm looking at one of the papers that I wrote about what do you see for yourself? And it said like, what do you dream of doing and can you see making it happen? And it was being a talk show host. So weird. For the last 20 years, I had never even thought that. So to look back at that, when I saw that, I said, what the? Who even knew that when I was 18, I was writing this down, forgot about it, went off in a completely different direction, and now I host a show.
Yeah.
Right? It was the weirdest
moment. The law of attraction. It happens and it works whether you believe in it or not. You attract what you put out there.
Yes, I agree with that. But how is that? Because if I wasn't doing it for so long, I wasn't putting that out there.
You put it out there.
You're saying I put it out there even though I was unaware. I put it out. I wrote it down at 18.
It was a sort of vision board that you didn't even realize.
And then I didn't look at the vision board, and it came to life.
There, and it came round full circle when you were ready for it.
So weird.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like with you would be an example like that?
I have so many examples
like
of
what?
it. When I was young, I used to look through magazines. Remember I told you I didn't really have any real ambition, or I didn't see myself doing anything. I used to look through magazines, and I would imagine that the girls in the magazines were having such a great time doing what they were doing, that the models would get to travel to these wonderful locations and have these wonderful clothes, and they had these great like hair and makeup people, and I would live vicariously through them, and I would never be jealous for them. I would always kind of envision what life would be like for them. And never really putting myself in their place, like, oh, I want to do that. But I would almost transport to what it was like for them in that page, like to get that picture. And then I remember when it happened to me, when I was actually modeling and doing that. And I didn't realize it when it started happening to me. It wasn't until I started learning about the law of attraction and just visualization and how what you think actually happens, how your life is really an indication of what your thoughts are.
That's interesting, because that happened when you were younger too, and then that did happen too. So you're saying it was like you were an accident, because before you were saying I was an accidental entrepreneur and almost an accidental anything or everything, but now it looks like you weren't.
Yeah.
You're manifesting it.
Yes, and I remember another example is, I come from a very humble, modest upbringing. Nobody in my family is, a multimillionaire. My parents worked very hard. We weren't poor, but they worked very hard. We never had, anything fancy. They always made ends meet, but barely. And I remember just never thinking, oh, we have trouble making ends meet. Oh, money is a problem for us. That was never a thought. Never. And I do remember anytime we would see either a beautiful car or a beautiful house or anything that was a little bit more upscale, a little bit more elevated, I remember just thinking, oh, I love that. Or, oh, yeah, I want to live like that. Oh, that's the house I want. Oh, I can't wait to have that car. Never thinking, oh, I can't have that. That's not for us. We can't have that. And sure enough, that's kind of the life that I manifested. I didn't know how I was going to manifest that life, but I manifested a life where I could pretty much have the things that I wanted.
Yes.
I didn't know how. I didn't know how.
I was reading this book. It's fabulous, and I feel like you're saying the same thing in this book. It's called How to Be a Badass. No, something about badass. Like be the badass that you are.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I know the one you're talking about.
So good. I remember I got it by accident because I don't really read self-help books.
Yeah.
I really don't ever read self-help books
Right.
at this point in my life. But this ended up on my phone for some reason in this app.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this? How did this get here? And I don't know if maybe I had seen something and said, oh, I should check out this book. And like I had requested it or something and it came in later. I don't know what happened, but it landed in my phone. And for some reason I started reading it. And I was like, this book is, yes, it speaks to me. And it's all the things that you're saying right now. All those things.
Yeah.
And I do really, I get it. I see that. And you can see you're proof positive of that.
Absolutely. And you can see it in the negative and you can see it in the positive. Anytime you think something negatively, it happens. And it can be as simple as like, oh, every time I have to go to this place, it's the worst traffic. You better bet your ass you're going to be sitting in some traffic. So that's like your state of mind, and that's what you're calling to yourself, and that's where you're putting yourself.
And also maybe it's going to feel like worse traffic to
because
you're going to see it like that.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
So interesting.
Like ever since I was young, I always get the best parking spots everywhere. Anywhere I go, I get the parking spot in the front.
Really?
It happens.
Because you think it's going to happen.
Exactly. What other explanation is there?
Right. So interesting.
My husband will drive around for hours, get frustrated, get annoyed, and I will be driving and I'll get a spot right in the front.
So do you think he assumes he's not going to get a spot?
Yes.
I feel like with me it's 50-50. You know, like going to New York City and like trying to find a spot, it is 50-50. Some days you're like, whoa, this score, what a spot, I can't believe it.
But that's kind of the explanation of the law of attraction in its simplest form.
Is that you will attract what you put out there.
And recently I was listening to a woman who was talking about the law of attraction, and she fully believes in it, and she talks about it and she explains it. And, you know, she talks about like, so the people who went through horrible upbringing and went through horrible abuse and really, really terrible things, what you're saying is that they manifested those things into their life. And she said, yes. They didn't willingly do it because she went through a horrible, horrible abuse in her life when she was young. And she said that now looking back, yes, the way that she thought kind of manifested that. And then the way she was thinking while it was happening kept her there longer than she had to. So she grew up in a household where her mother was always really afraid of everything. And she would always... She put this fear of everything, like be careful because it's a horrible world out there, because there are horrible people that will do horrible things to you. Everywhere you go, people are looking to do horrible, and she grew up thinking that horrible things were going to happen to her all the time. That's all she knew. That's how she was thinking all the time, because that's how her mother thought. And sure enough, that's what happened to her. And that's not what she wanted to happen to her, of course not. But that's what her subconscious was trained to believe. So in a way, she explained it in a way where it kind of makes sense.
It might not have happened in the first place because of what she did.
Of course not.
But what continued after that was maybe a factor of what she was kind of taught to do or think or believe about the world.
If every time you go outside, you believe that something horrible is going to happen to you, you're attracting that to yourself. If you're envisioning something horrible happening to you, you're eventually going to draw that to yourself. So if you're constantly thinking of what you do not want to happen to you, that's what you're attracting to yourself. and if you can think of it as like placing an order, like the vibrations of the universe, they don't really think in terms of positive and negative. They only match the vibration of what you're thinking. So it makes total sense.
So when did you figure this out yourself?
When I started reading a lot about it, and I started realizing that that's what had happened in my life, the good things and the bad things. Fortunately, in my life, there were more examples of good things. I realized that for the most part, I thought good thoughts most of my life. I thought positive things most of my life. I envisioned, my daydreaming was always of positive things, of beautiful things. I always envisioned myself in good situations, in better situations, in almost impossibly good situations. And those things kind of happened.
Yeah.
Almost exactly as I visualized them, as I daydreamed them.
What were some of the bad things?
That happened as I got older. As I got older, that I was in some relationships that I would think, oh, this isn't going to work out. Oh, something horrible is going to happen with this relationship, or he's going to do something not good. That's what would happen.
So why did you think that?
Because I think as we get older, fear gets into our minds. We are conditioned to think certain things. Society, we are kind of conditioned to think, to be more humble. Society teaches us to be a little bit more humble, and the old the old saying, "Oh, don't jinx it." If you think it's don't jinx it, because then it might. If you think that's something good, it might turn out bad. Or don't. It's all that bullshit that gets in the way.
You are right. I think
of us thinking how we used to think when we were kids.
Yes.
When a natural, clean, innocent child thinks, and they just imagine playing, and they envision themselves being an astronaut and going to the moon, and they envision themselves doing amazing things. Not like the little girl whose mother was really fearful and would tell her that every time she would go outside, something bad might happen and a bad man is going to get her and do bad things to her. That's not a normal childhood. That's not, or the mother who's always thinking that her son is going to get hit by a car, that her son is going to get some horrible illness, or that's not normal. And yes, I believe that everyone has moments of those scary thoughts. We all think, oh my God, what if? But you don't live in that thought.
Yeah,
you don't
feel
stay
it and
there.
go.
You get yourself out of that. And for the most part, you envision your children growing up to have wonderful lives. You envision them being fulfilled and having successful careers and being happy. We all worry about the people that we love, but for the most part, you envision them being really wonderful.
Yeah. So you think that when you started to think this is going to not be good.
It happens.
And it's because of just those messages that you couldn't help but like shield yourself from fully, they came in and made it happen.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with you.
So how do you feel about your marriage with Richard? How are you approaching it?
So when that happened, I was in a place in my life where I was fully prepared to be single. I thought I was just gonna date. I was open to dating, but I was older, and I was like, I'm gonna be in a relationship until it's not good anymore, and then I'm gonna not be in a relationship. I don't need to be married.
Right, so you were divorced at that point?
Well, I was married when I was very young.
Okay.
For 4.5 years. And then I was in a couple of long relationships. So I dated a little bit in between those. But I was in a couple of long relationships and dated, and now I was older. I was in my mid-40s, and I was like, I'm just gonna date. It's fine. I'm fine. I'm so good by myself, and I have my family. I have great friends, and I'm good. And I remember thinking, the kind of love that I want probably doesn't exist.
Okay.
But unless I find the kind of love that I want, which is like in fairy tales, that's what I want. I want that kind of love. That's what I'm not gonna settle for anything less than that. And I remember thinking that that's what I want. That's what I want. And that's what finally came into my life.
So that's
what
the
came into
law
my
of
life.
attraction.
I wasn't looking for it. You know, and I remember somebody telling me a story of these older people and how it was almost like a fairy tale, and they were old, and this man loved this woman so much, and he did so many beautiful, amazing things for her, and it was just this amazing love story. And I remember saying, oh, I want that kind of love. That's what I want.
This is a movie you're saying, Lisa?
No, somebody was telling me about a story, something that they read about, and it was like one of these like amazing stories. And I remember saying, that's what I want. And anytime I would hear about something like that, I would say, that's what I want. That's what I need. I'm not settling for anything less than that.
Right, because before that you were attracting whatever.
Some just difficult crap.
Yeah. Because you didn't, that was what you were.
Yeah, I just thought, it had to be difficult.
So now you've been together with Richard for like, what, 4 or 5 years?
5 years.
5 years. So do you feel like you're still giving off, it's still that same thing?
Yeah, it's amazing. I feel like we found each other at the right time.
Isn't that so interesting? It really is.
Yeah.
All this whole conversation about what you're talking about with the law of attraction, I think it's so interesting.
It really is interesting.
Yeah. And how, because you can go your whole life and not really think that way and not realize it. But it's like once you start seeing it, it really can change.
Because the truth is that it's happening whether you believe in it or not. It's like I don't have to try to prove it to someone. I don't have to try to convince you that it's working, because it's working whether you believe it or not. Your life is proof of your thoughts.
Yeah. And so right now your life is good. You feel like you have manifested what you wanted for yourself on so many levels.
On so many levels. And even the things that I have struggled with, I can see where it's coming from. I don't know. Like, especially as I've gotten older. The things that I find myself being negative about, I catch myself saying, this is the perfect example of me saying things that are going to manifest in negative things. I'm saying things that I catch myself.
I was just going to say, you catch yourself as you're doing it.
This is what I talk about,
Yes. So your life is good. You hang out with, you have good friends. You and Richard see each other a lot. You go on tour with him sometimes, right? You were on tour with him recently. He was in South America.
With him a lot. Yeah.
So that's fun.
It is. It's tiring sometimes, but it's fun.
What's your daily life like? What's your day-to-day thing?
There's really no routine, which is good. I enjoy really being at home these days a lot. I'm at a point where I'm looking for challenges in my life. I don't know what that is. I feel a little bit transient. I don't really know how to explain that. And I guess, and maybe this is an example of how I've been a little bit negative, being in my 50s. In the entertainment industry, and the opportunities, especially for someone like me, are very, very limited at this point, and I'm okay with that, because look, I'm still working, I'm doing things, I have my brand, I'm busy, so I'm okay, but I'm still at a point where I want to be challenged by something. And I don't really know what that is.
So like a new something.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's in the entertainment industry. I don't know if it's doing what I do, or it might be something new. I don't know what it is. So I feel like I catch myself sometimes limiting myself. And that's where I have to pull myself out of it and realize that I can make some of my own opportunities. I just have to realize how it is that I want to contribute, what it is that I want to do. And sometimes I have to remind myself that it's okay if I don't want to do anything. It's okay if I do want to be semi-retired at this point and enjoy my life and enjoy my husband and enjoy my family. It's okay. We have to remind ourselves of that too.
Yeah, it's interesting too. It's almost like when you were just figuring out what you wanted in a relationship. You just sometimes need time to figure that out.
That's right.
And then suddenly it may come to you as, this is what I want to do next.
That's right. Not all of us are meant to save the world. Not all of us are meant to, win a Nobel Prize. Some of us just have to live our best life and be the heroes in our own life, and be a great wife and a really great daughter and a wonderful sister and a good friend. And sometimes that's really wonderful. And living in a time where social media makes us all feel like we need to be, you know, something grand and win an Oscar and win a Grammy and win a Nobel Prize and, you know, do something to
prove or validate or something.
To validate ourselves, you know, where in an era where everybody gets a freaking trophy, it's kind of okay to not get one and to just do you and live a good life and be happy for your life. Like, you know, it's so easy to compare ourselves to
that's a
everything.
Trap, but an easy trap to fall into. A very common trap for people to fall into. It's natural because we are social people.
Exactly.
Too. And that's, I think, probably part of it. There is maybe some instinctive thing built in there or something, but it is a trap. Yes.
And so I'm at a point where I feel so good sometimes with my life. And I'm at a point where it's almost like wherever there is something going on, what everybody is doing, like I almost don't want to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that says something too. You just have to figure out, why do I want that? It's probably right. There's a good reason for that.
Yes.
It's not a bad thing.
I'm starting to realize that it's okay to go to the beat of my own drum. It's okay to want to be in my home with my people. I don't need to always be, I so don't have FOMO.
That's good. You don't want FOMO. And you're evolving.
Yes. We all need to evolve.
And you've always kind of gone your own way anyway, even though maybe then it was a different kind of busier thing and now you're going to the more settled kind of thing. Yeah. It's still you're going your own way.
Yeah.
So I say hooray for that.
Thank you.
Daisy, this was great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Should I ask you my last question though? I feel like I should. I feel like you already answered it, but I do like to ask this a lot of times. So it's two parts. Who do people think you are? What's the image they have of Daisy Fuentes?
Oh, I don't know. I think it depends who you ask. I think some people will say, Daisy who? Some people will say some negative bullshit. Some people will say she's a has-been. Some people will say she's doing wonderful things for animals. And some people will say she encouraged me to eat healthier and make some changes. And I like that bit. I'll go with that. I think it depends who you ask.
And who are you really?
I am, who am I really? I'm just a woman, really, trying to still figure out who I am and how I can still contribute and how I can still enjoy myself. I'm still trying to figure out what life is about, and I'm still trying to figure out how to enjoy myself.
I think you're going to find it. That's my prediction. Thanks, Daisy.
Thank you.
That was Daisy Fuentes. Catch our video where Daisy answers extra questions. It's on youtube.com/reallyfamous. Make sure you tap the red subscribe button. And what I just realized is I've been telling you for like months now to tap that subscribe button, but I forgot to tell you to tap the little bell because that's actually the notification button. So you're notified every time I release a new video, which is basically every week. Thanks again to Robin Samuels and Christy Lance, and to my spectacular patrons who donate a few dollars every month and are much appreciated by me. Thank you, Bob, Pat, Jamie, and my other wonderful patrons. If you'd like to donate a few dollars to Really Famous, amazing. You can go to reallyfamouspodcast.com/donate. I also want to thank every one of you who has reached out recently to tell me how much you appreciate the show. And maybe there's one guest whose talk really impacted you and made you think or made you feel something. And I love that. I really appreciate you reaching out. It's a gift for me. So thank you for doing that. If you have something you want to say and you haven't reached out yet, please do. My email is reallyfamouspodcast@gmail.com. or you can reach out through social media. I tend to favor Instagram. I'm a little easier to reach there, but I'm also on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Kara Mayer Robinson. Thank you for hanging out with me and Daisy Fuentes for an hour. I'll talk to you again soon, very soon.